Now, many of the tribes which I learned great knowledge from have been wiped out. They no longer exist anymore.
They're gone.
Whole community, they are gone, finish. And this pattern is happening all over Africa. In the Sudan, in Uganda, in Kenya, there are tribes, and Angola, there are tribes which are no longer there anymore. They have been deliberately wiped out. And I ask myself, is there no one who pities Africa? Is there no one who sees what is being done to my people? Our leaders, our politicians seem to be criminally blind to what is going on in Africa. In Africa, say, if you draw a map of Africa before you, you will find that all those countries where long civil wars are being waged are those countries which, if they were left to themselves, would feed Africa. The Sudan, Angola, Mozambique, these countries were once some of the biggest food producers in Africa. They fed the Portuguese Empire and the British Empire. Uganda was once the breadbasket of Africa. But whole populations have been wiped out. And if anyone thinks that I, a shaman of my people, can stand by and watch this crime, then they are mistaken. Because Africa is being killed. You know, I can tell you more, but I don't want to get out of it.
Hold on. David, the rape and slaughter in Africa is unprecedented. We've done many programs about HIV, where it came from, accidental or otherwise. It was certainly introduced into the African population. And over there now, the statistics are withering to contemplate about how many people are dying. Africa is imploding.
Africa is a phenomenal continent. That's the point. It's very, very important to the Illuminati. I mean, the British headed there, and for the British, really Illuminati in terms of the powers controlling that invasion. Indeed, the European expansion in general into Africa was Illuminati inspired, and the timescale was brought about by them. And you can follow the different streams of invasions of people from Europe into Africa. As you follow the different streams, you can actually show that from the first arrival of the European peoples in the Cape, maybe even earlier that, but officially in the Cape, right to the present day, and the ruling families that control that continent, they are connected all the way through. It's an unbroken stream, just the personnel have changed. And when you go to Africa, the idea that that continent cannot feed itself is utterly, utterly ludicrous. And indeed, Africa is just a wonderful example that tells the story of the world in terms of the manipulation. There is no reason for one single person, one single child in that continent to be hungry. No way, no need. But if you had abundance, and people in Africa were left to rule themselves and to live their own lives, you would have abundance. Abundance equals choice, choice equals freedom. So what we have all around the world, and Africa is a fantastic example, is the creation of dependency through scarcity. So if you start wars, you destroy the food-growing land. If you fill the food-growing land with transnational corporations growing for the Western markets, etc., you create scarcity. Scarcity equals dependency, dependency equals control, and that's what's going on.
Indeed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll pause, take our top of the hour break, come right back in about 6 or 7 minutes with Mr. Credo Mutwa and David Icke. See you then. All right, we are live on the phone to Credo Mutwa in South Africa and David Icke here in the States, who is, as always, at one point or another on one of his worldwide tours. David, you had some issues in Canada I want to touch on very briefly, then get back to our story here about our reptilian overlords, our elder brothers, as Credo calls them, as his people do. Tell us what happened in Canada just briefly. First of all, there were a lot of people expressing concern for your physical well-being.
Well, it was a build-up, really. Over about 4 weeks before I arrived, the two people who were putting the events on, and they were tremendous, two women. I mean, they stuck with it when almost everyone else would have caved in. And they wouldn't cave in. And as a result of that, when I arrived at Ottawa Airport, I got off the plane, and I was the last off the plane from at the back of the immigration queue. And suddenly I looked up, and there's this uniformed lady standing next to me, looking at me like a shark that's just found lunch, you know. And so I thought, all right, what's all that about? And I made a bit of a joke with her, and then saw her go back and say to another immigration official behind the kind of booths, that's him. So I thought, well, it's going to be an interesting night. And then I went to...
she didn't ask you to autograph one of your books either.
No, she didn't, no. It wasn't one of them, no. Actually, she said it so openly, I thought her application for a plainclothes job, surveillance job, ought to be reconsidered. It was quite funny, really. When I got to the booth, handed my passport and stuff, and I'm having a joke with the guy, and everything's kind of fine. And then he punched my name up on his computer, and the whole energy changed, and he just said to me, immigration. And I saw the screen a little bit later when I was left in an office, which I was for a long time, and it just said my name, and then it said October the 1st, and in big capital letters, watch for. And over the next goodness knows how many hours, I got out of the place about 2 a.m. in the morning. They'd looked through every piece of clothing, and the guy was wearing rubber gloves. He must have known about my socks. And he read every piece of material. And being a researcher, I carry so much material around, which I'm reading all the time. And he read all that stuff and could find absolutely nothing to back up this idea that I'm anti anything in terms of racial things. It's a great thing if you want to throw mud at someone, because then you know you get the media and people just believe it. But interestingly, it got as far as the fact that the head of the hate unit was actually in the audience when I spoke in Toronto, and said to one of the organizers, I enjoyed the talk, which was quite ironic, really, and of course found nothing. But when I walked off the stage at Toronto, I walked about a few strides behind the curtain, and there were some immigration police saying that if I didn't report to immigration the next morning, they would arrest me and all this stuff. And basically, they were trying to prevent me from talking by using, first of all, he's anti-Semitic, which they couldn't hang anything on because it's just nonsensical. When that failed, they turned on the immigration law and can you speak without the right pieces of paper and all this stuff. But in the end, all three events went ahead thanks to phenomenal support from people in Canada. I mean, it was just incredible, the support there. And, you know, when you're getting closer and closer to uncovering this stuff, and as I say, this has really been upped against me since the reptilian thing was introduced to the story, which Credo knows enormous amounts about. You're going to draw in people who are going to try to stop you. I mean, it's just part of it, and no one said it would be easy, but I'm just getting on with it. I don't even think about anyone possibly stopping this. There's an energy emerging on the planet now, a new vibration, literally, that's waking people up and opening people's eyes, and that's an energy which you challenge at your peril, really. And I think myself that it's easy to look at the world as it is and get caught in the idea that it's hopeless. But you can look at something in its dying state, and it can seem chaotic, it can seem hopeless. But actually what you're looking at is the death throes of an old system. And I'm absolutely convinced that we're in the death throes in an old system, and this system's coming down. It's coming down in the next few years, and we're going to have some bumpy years while it happens. But I'm incredibly optimistic about the future, not least that people like Credo with this enormous knowledge are now coming out, and the pieces in the puzzle are being linked and confirmed. Knowing what you're dealing with is halfway to dealing with it. Not knowing what you're dealing with, it can be very difficult because everything's kind of not there. You can't touch it, you can't taste it, you can't see it. How do you deal with it? What's happening now is the veil's lifting, and bizarre as the story may be, it's becoming increasingly obvious.